As 1941 unfolded, the United States faced a paradox. It had immense industrial potential, yet millions of men were leaving factories and farms to fight overseas. The engines of war could not run without hands to operate them, and for the first time in modern American history, women were called upon not merely to contribute, but to sustain the nation's industrial, agricultural, and civic lifeblood. The shock of Pearl Harbor intensified the urgency, transforming casual civic responsibility into an existential imperative. Cities and small towns alike saw a flood of women seeking employment, many for the first time, stepping into roles once considered the exclusive domain of men. These women were not just filling positions, they were reconstructing the workforce from the ground up. Factories that had struggled to meet wartime quotas suddenly transformed into bustling hubs of energy and innovation. Welding sparks flew in bays where women learned arc welding alongside seasoned male veterans. Machine shops that once operated at a leisurely pace now hummed with the steady rhythm of drill presses and assembly lines, women mastering tools that required skill, precision, and endurance. Their entry into industry challenged social norms and reshaped the fabric of American labor, proving that necessity could overturn decades of tradition almost overnight. Recruitment campaigns across the nation used imagery and rhetoric that balanced patriotism with empowerment. Rosie the Riveter became a symbol not merely of duty but of capability, a cultural touchstone embodying strength, intelligence, and resolve. Propaganda posters, films, and radio programs reached deep into rural towns and urban neighborhoods alike, convincing women that their labor was not optional but essential to the survival of democracy. Communities rallied around this shift. Schools offered technical training, civic organizations coordinated childcare, and churches organized social support networks to ease the burden on working mothers. The entire country became an ecosystem sustaining this unprecedented social transformation. The diversity of the female workforce became one of its defining strengths. Women of all races, ethnicities, and socioeconomic backgrounds flooded into shipyards, aircraft plants, munitions factories, and offices. While systemic barriers still limited opportunities for many African American and Latino women, wartime necessity created openings that had been unthinkable just years before. In urban centers like Detroit and Chicago, women learned to operate complex machinery in the automotive and aircraft industries. In rural areas, they took up roles in agricultural production, keeping farms operational while men served abroad. Their collective contribution reshaped the very definition of labor and citizenship in wartime America. Training programs were expanded and refined at remarkable speed. Vocational schools, often coordinated with federal agencies, taught women to operate heavy machinery, manage inventory, and perform maintenance that had once been the purview of male specialists. In shipyards on the West Coast, women learned welding, riveting, and engine assembly. In aircraft factories, they mastered precision instruments, hydraulic systems, and assembly jigs. The education was both rapid and rigorous, transforming novices into experts whose skill rivaled or surpassed that of men with decades of experience. This accelerated training created a workforce capable of sustaining the industrial momentum critical to victory. Beyond factories and farms, women assumed responsibilities in civil defense, communications, and logistics. They staffed telephone exchanges, monitored air raid warnings, drove ambulances, and coordinated rationing programs. Volunteer organizations expanded dramatically, providing crucial support in hospitals, community centers, and government offices. The collective efforts of these women ensured that the home front operated as efficiently and resiliently as the front lines demanded, turning every city block and factory floor into a node of national defense. Their contribution blurred the boundary between civilian and military effort, creating a unified wartime society that relied on every available hand. The physical and emotional demands of this shift were enormous. Women worked 12-hour shifts, sometimes 7 days a week, balancing labor with family responsibilities and personal sacrifice. Yet the psychological impact was transformative. Millions gained confidence in their abilities, a sense of independence, and a recognition that their work directly influenced the fate of the nation. Letters, diaries, and oral histories from the era reveal both pride and exhaustion, fear, and determination. These personal narratives illuminate the human dimension of a societal revolution, showing how courage and resilience were forged not on battlefields but in factories, offices, and farms across the country. By the end of 1942, the integration of women into the workforce had evolved from a temporary stopgap into a fundamental pillar of American war strategy. Factories that once struggled to meet quotas now exceeded them, agricultural output stabilized, and the nation's administrative machinery operated with unprecedented efficiency. The presence of women in these roles not only sustained production but transformed the pace and scale of American military preparedness. What had begun as a response to crisis became a decisive factor in the Allied war effort, demonstrating that victory relied as much on the home front as on the front lines. As 1943 dawned, it became clear that women were no longer temporary placeholders in America's workforce. They were engines of industrial transformation. In every city, town, and factory, they reshaped production at a speed that stunned observers. In Detroit's automotive plants, women learned to assemble aircraft engines with precision that rivaled seasoned machinists. Riveters in California's shipyards sent sparks flying over miles of steel decks, their work directly feeding the Navy's growing Pacific Fleet. Their labor was physically demanding, mentally taxing, and socially revolutionary, breaking centuries of convention while ensuring the machinery of war never faltered. The integration of women into heavy industry required massive logistical and educational support. Vocational schools, government programs, and company-led initiatives provided training in welding, metalwork, and machinery operation. Apprenticeships were accelerated, allowing women to attain proficiency in weeks instead of years. Experienced male workers often served as mentors, creating cross-generational partnerships that blurred traditional workplace hierarchies. The learning curve was steep, but the results were extraordinary. Women who had never before touched industrial tools became indispensable, capable of maintaining production under pressure and even innovating processes to increase efficiency. Factories evolved physically and socially to accommodate the influx of women. Lunchrooms, locker rooms, and rest areas were expanded, and childcare facilities were established near major industrial hubs. Transportation networks were adapted to ensure women could reach work sites reliably, sometimes miles from their homes. These structural adaptations reflected a national acknowledgement that sustaining wartime production depended not merely on assigning tasks, but on supporting the human laborers behind them. The integration of women into the workforce was thus as much a social engineering challenge as an industrial one. The impact on output was immediate and dramatic. Plants that had struggled to meet quotas now surpassed expectations, delivering aircraft, tanks, ships, and munitions at rates previously thought impossible. In the West Coast shipyards, the addition of women doubled the workforce on key assembly lines, accelerating ship launches by weeks. In aircraft factories, women built bomber fuselages and engines that would define the air campaigns over Europe and the Pacific. Their labor was a force multiplier, proving that industrial productivity could be expanded not simply by increasing hours, but by expanding talent and skill. This workforce revolution also challenged long-standing gender norms. For the first time, women operated machinery, drove forklifts, and supervised production lines. Their success undermined societal assumptions about physical strength, technical ability, and professional aptitude. Newspapers, films, and radio broadcasts celebrated their accomplishments, while private correspondence and diaries reveal a mixture of pride, anxiety, and awe at the responsibilities they had assumed. In many ways, the war accelerated social transformation by demonstrating that necessity and competence could outweigh entrenched prejudice. African American women and other minority groups experienced a parallel, though more challenging, transformation. Wartime labor shortages created opportunities in previously segregated facilities, allowing skilled minority workers to operate machinery, manage logistics, and supervise teams. Discrimination persisted, but necessity forged practical inclusion. These women not only contributed to the war effort, but also challenged societal structures, paving the way for post-war civil rights advances. Their participation demonstrated that the home front, like the battlefront, was a site where courage, skill, and resilience could redefine opportunity. Beyond industrial production, women assumed roles in government, communications, and civil defense. They staffed offices, operated telegraphs and switchboards, organized ration distribution, and coordinated air raid precautions. In doing so, they ensured that the national administrative apparatus functioned efficiently even as millions of men were deployed overseas. Their labor was both visible and invisible, essential to the war effort, yet often unrecognized, a quiet backbone that enabled frontline victories. The coordination of these efforts reflected a remarkable societal mobilization, demonstrating that victory relied as much on the home front as on combat operations. By mid-1943, the transformation was complete. Women had not only filled the gaps left by men, but had reshaped the very structure of American labor. Factories, farms, and offices now operated on a new paradigm of efficiency, innovation, and inclusivity. Their work allowed the United States to sustain a global military campaign on an unprecedented scale. More than a temporary necessity, the contributions of women became a decisive element of national strategy, proving that the home front, empowered by skill, resilience, and determination, could influence the outcome of a world war as dramatically as any battlefield victory. By 1943, the figure of Rosie the Riveter had transcended propaganda to become a living symbol of American industrial resilience. In factories from New York to Los Angeles, women took up hammers, welding torches, and rivet guns, performing work that had once been deemed impossible for their gender. The image of a woman in overalls, bandana tied over her hair, hammer poised midair, captured not just imagination, but the reality of thousands of women who braved smoke, heat, and steel to keep the engines of war running. Each rivet driven into a ship's hull, each bolt tightened on a bomber fuselage, was a tangible contribution to national survival. The campaigns to recruit and retain women were sophisticated and relentless. Government posters, films, and newspaper articles emphasized patriotism, skill, and personal empowerment. Many women were inspired not just by duty, but by the opportunity to demonstrate competence in roles historically denied to them. Local communities organized transportation networks, childcare facilities, and evening classes to ensure that women could balance industrial work with family responsibilities. This support infrastructure became essential, transforming factories and shipyards into organized ecosystems capable of sustaining intense labor over extended periods. In shipyards along the West Coast, women mastered the grueling craft of welding and riveting, often working 12-hour shifts under the glare of arc welds. Sparks flew across steel decks as women learned the precision required to ensure ships could withstand enemy fire. Their presence reshaped industrial culture. Supervisors began relying on their skill and ingenuity, while male colleagues adapted to a transformed workforce where women were not just helpers, but equals in productivity. Each successful launch became a testament to their capabilities, and morale soared as crews at sea came to depend on vessels constructed by hands previously overlooked. The influence of Rosie extended beyond physical labor into morale and social identity. She embodied competence, independence, and determination, providing a unifying symbol for women navigating the challenges of industrial work and domestic obligations. Oral histories reveal a mix of pride, apprehension, and exhilaration among those who identified with her image. For many, the work was physically exhausting and emotionally demanding, but the opportunity to contribute meaningfully to the war effort instilled a sense of empowerment that reshaped expectations and ambitions long after the war ended. The industrial education provided to women was intensive and precise. Technical schools, company-run workshops, and on-the-job mentoring transformed novices into experts capable of operating complex machinery, interpreting blueprints, and performing precision tasks under pressure. Women learned not only the mechanics of industrial labor, but also problem-solving skills, teamwork, and leadership. In many cases, they exceeded expectations, innovating techniques that increased efficiency and improved safety. Their work proved that training, intelligence, and adaptability could overcome preconceived limitations. African American women, often relegated to the least skilled positions before the war, began to occupy critical roles in factories and shipyards. Despite discrimination, They learned to operate welding machines, assembly lines, and munitions equipment, challenging both societal and industrial norms. Their contribution was indispensable. As labor shortages deepened, skill became more important than race or background. This integration, though imperfect and uneven, demonstrated that wartime necessity could accelerate social progress and create opportunities for inclusion that had previously been unimaginable. Women also filled administrative, logistical, and support roles crucial to sustaining industrial output. They managed supply chains, tracked inventory, and ensured that factories maintained continuous operation. In government offices, they processed contracts, coordinated transportation, and assisted in civil defense planning. Their labor was both visible in assembly lines and invisible in the networks that kept production moving. Together, these efforts created a home front capable of sustaining global military operations, proving that industrial success relied on intelligence, organization, and collaboration as much as physical labor. By late 1943, the impact of Rosie the Riveter was unmistakable. American industry had transformed, achieving a scale and efficiency that rivaled entire nations. Women had not merely replaced men, they had redefined what was possible, turning necessity into innovation and labor into national power. Their work on the home front had tangible consequences on the battlefield, ensuring that troops were supplied, equipment was maintained, and operations could continue without interruption. In every factory and shipyard, in every riveted hull and completed bomber, Rosie's legacy was visible, a testament to the power of determination, skill, and collective purpose. By 1944, women had become the backbone of American heavy industry, transforming factories and shipyards into engines of global warfare. Across the nation, women learned to operate equipment once reserved for men: riveting machines, lathes, hydraulic presses, and complex assembly lines that required precision, coordination, and stamina. Shipyards on the West Coast roared with activity as women labored on hulls, installed engines, and worked on intricate electrical systems. Their integration into heavy industry demonstrated that skill, adaptability, and determination could overcome centuries of gendered assumptions about physical and technical capability. The learning curve was immense, yet women adapted with remarkable speed. Intensive on-the-job training programs, vocational courses, and mentorship by experienced workers transformed novices into experts within weeks. Some women, previously confined to clerical or domestic roles, mastered welding torches, pneumatic drills, and sheet metal work with precision that rivaled veteran male workers. Supervisors noted that women's attention to detail often exceeded expectations, leading to higher quality work in tasks that required accuracy under pressure. Their success challenged long-standing industrial norms, proving that competence was not limited by gender. Shipbuilding, in particular, showcased women's contributions in dramatic fashion. Riveters worked 12-hour shifts above steel decks, welding and riveting under searing heat and deafening noise. Every bolt and weld had to meet exact specifications. A single miscalculation could compromise a vessel's structural integrity. Women performed these tasks with determination, often taking on physically demanding labor previously deemed unsuitable. Their efforts ensured that the U.S. Navy could replace losses at a pace faster than the Axis could destroy, turning industrial labor into a strategic weapon that reshaped the dynamics of naval warfare. Beyond shipyards, women revolutionized aircraft production. They assembled fuselages, installed engines, and worked on avionics in plants across the Midwest and East Coast. In cities like Wichita and Dayton, they operated precision machinery, calibrated instruments, and conducted quality inspections that demanded both technical knowledge and meticulous attention. Female machinists became essential to meeting production quotas for bombers, fighters, and transport aircraft, directly influencing the air campaigns over Europe and the Pacific. Their labor allowed the United States to project power across two oceans simultaneously, a feat impossible without their expertise. The workforce also grew increasingly diverse. African American and Latino women, once excluded from industrial positions, began occupying skilled roles due to labor shortages and federal pressure. Though segregation and discrimination persisted, many proved indispensable in shipyards, munitions plants, and aircraft factories. Their participation not only filled critical labor gaps, but also began to challenge entrenched racial and social hierarchies. Women of color became a visible and influential part of the wartime industrial machine, their work laying early foundations for post-war social change. The psychological and emotional dimensions of this transformation were profound. Women balanced intense labor with domestic responsibilities, often managing households while working long shifts. Stress, fatigue, and physical strain were constant companions, yet the sense of contributing directly to the war effort provided a powerful motivator. Letters, diaries, and oral histories reveal a mixture of pride, exhaustion, and determination, illustrating the human cost of industrial mobilization. This emotional investment, coupled with practical skill, created a workforce whose commitment was both personal and patriotic. Government and industry recognized that sustaining female labor required more than opportunity. It demanded infrastructure. Child care centers, transportation networks, and housing accommodations were expanded to support working women. Vocational schools offered evening classes, teaching technical skills and safety procedures. Public campaigns emphasized respect and recognition for women's labor, fostering morale and reducing societal resistance. These measures created an environment where women could perform at peak efficiency, ensuring that industrial output remained uninterrupted despite immense pressures. By 1944, the integration of women into heavy industry had become indispensable to the Allied war effort. Factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants operated at unprecedented levels of efficiency and quality, powered by a workforce that had shattered assumptions and expanded the possibilities of human labor. Their contributions were not auxiliary, they were essential. In every riveted hull, every completed bomber, and every engine assembled, the imprint of women's skill, resilience, and determination was visible, proving that victory at home was inseparable from victory on the battlefield. By 1944, the presence of women in America's factories had begun to reshape not only production but industrial culture itself. Women were no longer assistants or temporary laborers. They had become essential operators, supervisors, and problem solvers. In munitions plants and shipyards, female forewomen managed teams, coordinated workflow, and maintained quality control. Their leadership skills emerged organically, driven by necessity, patience, and technical competence. These women supervised complex assembly lines, ensuring that speed did not come at the cost of safety or precision, and their ability to balance efficiency with meticulous attention to detail often surpassed their male counterparts. The integration of women accelerated technological adaptation and innovation. As new equipment and production techniques were introduced, women learned and applied them rapidly, often contributing suggestions that improved efficiency. For example, in aircraft manufacturing plants, female workers proposed assembly modifications that reduced downtime and increased output, demonstrating an aptitude for process optimization previously unrecognized in female labor. This synergy between learning and innovation became a hallmark of female contribution, transforming industrial spaces into hubs of experimentation and improvement. Women's role extended to critical logistical operations that kept the nation's war effort moving. They managed supply chains, tracked materials, and coordinated shipping schedules, ensuring that raw materials reached factories on time and finished products were delivered to ports or military depots without delay. Their work demanded attention to detail, organizational skill, and quick decision-making. By mastering these logistical networks, women became indispensable to maintaining the flow of production, demonstrating that industrial victory relied as much on planning and coordination as on physical labor. The expansion of female employment also transformed workplace dynamics. Men returning from early deployments often encountered women leading teams and operating machines with expertise equal to or greater than their own. This shift challenged traditional hierarchies and forced industrial managers to rethink assumptions about capability, authority, and efficiency. In some cases, these tensions were acute, but the overall effect was transformative. Workplaces became more meritocratic, skill-focused, and collaborative. Women's contributions were no longer peripheral. They were central to the operational success of the war economy. Across the nation, communities adjusted to support this new workforce. Schools offered technical evening classes, churches organized childcare programs, and neighborhoods created support networks that allowed women to meet both industrial and domestic responsibilities. Local businesses adapted hours, transportation schedules, and services to accommodate working mothers, while civic campaigns emphasized the patriotic importance of supporting women in the workforce. The result was a nationwide infrastructure that amplified women's capacity to sustain high-intensity labor without collapsing under the weight of social and family pressures. The psychological resilience of these women was extraordinary. Many juggled multiple roles: factory worker, mother, caregiver, and community organizer. The emotional strain was immense, yet letters and oral histories reveal that pride in contribution and the knowledge that their labor directly impacted the war effort provided a potent counterbalance. Women understood that every rivet, every assembled engine, and every coordinated shipment contributed to victory overseas. Their efforts blurred the lines between home front and battlefield, making industrial and domestic labor equally vital components of national defense. Women's influence extended to innovation in workplace safety and ergonomics. Supervisors and workers collaborated to redesign workstations, reduce repetitive strain injuries, and improve ventilation in factories where welding, painting, and machining created hazardous conditions. Their feedback and participation in safety committees were invaluable, ensuring that production could continue uninterrupted. In this way, female laborers were not just contributors. They were shapers of the work environment, transforming factories into spaces where efficiency, health, and human capability were optimized simultaneously. By late 1944, the full impact of women's integration into the industrial workforce was evident. America's war production reached unprecedented levels, with shipyards launching vessels faster than enemy forces could sink them, aircraft plants producing planes in staggering quantities, and munitions factories maintaining a constant flow of artillery and ammunition. Women were the driving force behind this transformation, demonstrating that industrial power was inseparable from human skill, resilience, and ingenuity. Their work had not only sustained the war effort, it had redefined the possibilities of the American workforce and reshaped society in ways that would endure long after the guns fell silent. By 1944, the home front had become a battlefield of its own, where women fought with determination, skill, and ingenuity. Factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants were arenas of intense labor, and the stakes were clear. Every hour lost, every shipment delayed, could reverberate across oceans to the men in combat. Women navigated these high-pressure environments with remarkable resilience, mastering complex machinery, learning technical skills at breakneck speed, and executing tasks that demanded precision, endurance, and unwavering focus. Their contribution was as essential to victory as any soldier in uniform. Shipyards along the east and west coasts exemplified the intensity of this industrial battle. Women worked on decks of massive vessels, welding steel plates, installing engines, and preparing ships for launch with skill and speed that left observers astounded. Noise, heat, and physical strain were constant companions, yet their determination never wavered. Supervisors noted that women often exceeded expectations in accuracy and efficiency, creating a culture where their competence became indispensable. The vessels they constructed carried soldiers, sailors, and supplies to distant battlefields, making the labor of the home front a tangible instrument of military power. Aircraft factories mirrored this transformation. Women assembled bombers, fighters, and transport planes under strict deadlines, following intricate blueprints and operating precision machinery. Their work directly influenced the air campaigns over Europe and the Pacific, ensuring that Allied forces had the planes necessary to gain and maintain air superiority. These women learned to balance speed with meticulous attention to detail, understanding that a single error could compromise missions and lives. In doing so, they elevated industrial labor to a strategic act of warfighting. The industrial education provided to women was both rigorous and practical. On-the-job training, vocational programs, and accelerated courses equipped them with technical knowledge and problem-solving skills essential for complex production environments. Female workers became adept at troubleshooting machinery, interpreting technical drawings, and optimizing assembly processes. Their rapid mastery of previously male-dominated tasks shattered assumptions about capability and created a workforce whose skill set was critical to sustaining the pace and scale of American production. Beyond production, women assumed critical roles in logistics and supply. They coordinated transportation, managed inventories, and ensured that raw materials and finished products moved efficiently through intricate networks spanning factories, ports, and military depots. Their labor ensured that wartime production was uninterrupted and reliable, demonstrating that logistical acumen was as essential as physical labor in sustaining the war effort. This invisible but vital work formed the backbone of America's industrial machine, making every factory, dock, and warehouse an extension of the battlefield. African American women and other minority workers faced additional challenges, navigating systemic discrimination while performing essential labor. Despite segregation and unequal treatment, many took on skilled roles in shipyards, munitions plants, and factories, proving indispensable to maintaining production. Their contributions not only filled critical labor shortages, but also laid the groundwork for social change, demonstrating that skill and determination could transcend barriers even in the midst of national crisis. Communities across the nation adapted to support this transformed workforce. Child care centers, transportation networks, and neighborhood organizations provided practical assistance that enabled women to meet the dual demands of industrial labor and family responsibilities. Civic campaigns emphasized the patriotic importance of their work, reinforcing morale and sustaining commitment despite exhaustion and stress. The home front thus became a coordinated system, integrating civilian life with national defense in a way that magnified the impact of women's labor. By the end of 1944, it was clear that the labor of American women had become a decisive factor in the war. Factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants operated at unprecedented levels of efficiency and output, directly enabling Allied operations across multiple theaters. Women were no longer peripheral participants. They were essential architects of victory, proving that the home front could be as strategically consequential as the front lines themselves. Their work had not only ensured survival, but had redefined the scope and scale of industrial capability, demonstrating the transformative power of skill, resilience, and collective purpose. By 1945, the demands on women in the workforce had reached staggering levels. 12-hour shifts, 6 or 7 days a week, became routine in factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants. The physical toll was immense: back strain from lifting heavy materials, burns from welding, repetitive stress injuries, and fatigue from long hours under harsh conditions. Yet for most, the personal cost was secondary to the moral imperative. They were part of a national mission, and each bolt tightened or rivet driven represented lives saved overseas. The war had transformed ordinary labor into a form of heroism, where diligence and endurance were acts of patriotic courage. The emotional strain was equally profound. Many women juggled their industrial responsibilities with family obligations, caring for children, elderly relatives, and sometimes entire households while their husbands, brothers, and sons were deployed. Letters from the front lines brought both comfort and anxiety, offering glimpses of loved ones' bravery, but also stark reminders of the dangers they faced. The constant balancing act required extraordinary resilience, and women developed coping mechanisms, community networks, shared childcare, and informal support systems that became lifelines amid relentless pressure. Industrial workplaces themselves became microcosms of camaraderie and tension. Women forged friendships and alliances across ethnic, class, and racial lines, learning to collaborate under stressful conditions. At the same time, fatigue, injuries, and the pressure to maintain quotas created conflicts and stress points. Supervisors often navigated these dynamics while enforcing production standards, recognizing that sustaining output depended on both efficiency and morale. The human element of war production, the personalities, struggles, and triumphs of individual workers, was as vital to victory as the machines they operated. Health risks were omnipresent. Exposure to chemicals in munitions plants, fumes from welding and painting, and the hazards of heavy machinery demanded constant vigilance. Safety protocols were introduced and refined, yet accidents remained inevitable. Women learned to protect themselves while maintaining output, developing a resilience and adaptability that mirrored the qualities of soldiers in combat. Their ability to endure physical hardship without compromising productivity became a defining feature of the wartime workforce. The psychological impact of this labor extended beyond the factory floor. Women gained confidence in their technical skills and leadership abilities, transforming their sense of self and societal identity. The pride of contributing tangibly to the war effort, coupled with recognition from supervisors, media, and community leaders, reinforced a sense of agency previously denied to many. This empowerment had lasting consequences, sowing the seeds for post-war movements advocating gender equality and broader societal change. Racial and socioeconomic factors further complicated the experience of female workers. African American women, often entering segregated or previously inaccessible roles, faced discrimination even as they performed essential labor. Their success in overcoming barriers not only contributed to the war effort, but also challenged prevailing social hierarchies, demonstrating the interplay between necessity, skill, and social change. Minority women's labor was a quiet revolution, reshaping both industry and society under the pressure of national emergency. Community recognition of women's sacrifices played a crucial role in sustaining morale. Local organizations, churches, and civic groups organized appreciation events, awards, and public ceremonies, acknowledging the labor and dedication of women who often remained anonymous heroes. These gestures, while symbolic, reinforced a collective sense of purpose, reminding workers that their contributions were valued and vital. The home front, though physically distant from battlefields, became a theater of courage, endurance, and solidarity. By the spring of 1945, it was evident that women had not merely supplemented the workforce, they had redefined it. Their physical labor, emotional resilience, and intellectual contribution ensured the continuous functioning of industrial and logistical systems crucial to Allied victory. The personal cost was high, yet the result was undeniable. Women had become indispensable to the war effort, proving that the combination of skill, determination, and collective purpose could reshape the course of history itself. By 1945, the massive participation of women in industrial labor had begun to transform American society in profound ways. Social norms, long entrenched in rigid ideas about gender roles, were being challenged daily on factory floors, shipyards, and aircraft plants. Women were no longer confined to domestic spheres or clerical work. They were leaders, skilled technicians, and indispensable contributors to the nation's industrial power. Their success in these roles demonstrated that capability was determined by skill and perseverance rather than gender, reshaping perceptions across communities and workplaces alike. The cultural impact extended far beyond production metrics. Media celebrated female industrial workers, not merely as temporary stand-ins, but as symbols of competence, independence, and resilience. Iconic figures like Rosie the Riveter represented a collective identity, inspiring women across the nation to see themselves as capable of extraordinary achievement. Newspapers, radio broadcasts, and films highlighted their contributions, while community recognition, awards, and public ceremonies validated the immense sacrifices they had made. Society was being subtly but irrevocably rewritten by the very act of women taking up hammers, welding torches, and rivet guns. Integration of women into skilled and supervisory positions also forced management to rethink leadership and workplace dynamics. Male supervisors and workers, initially skeptical, began to recognize women's technical ability, organizational skills, and commitment to production goals. In many cases, women assumed formal leadership roles, managing teams and coordinating complex operations with remarkable efficiency. These developments challenged traditional workplace hierarchies and planted the seeds for more egalitarian professional environments in the post-war era, demonstrating that necessity could accelerate social evolution. The war also catalyzed advances in racial and ethnic inclusion. African American, Latina, and immigrant women gained unprecedented access to industrial and technical roles, filling critical labor shortages while challenging systemic discrimination. Though barriers remained, the exigencies of wartime production created openings for minority women to showcase their competence and resilience. Their presence not only contributed materially to the war effort, but also began altering the social landscape, proving that skill, determination, and dedication transcended long-standing societal prejudices. Educational opportunities expanded alongside industrial employment. Vocational schools, community programs, and government initiatives provided women with technical skills that would have been inaccessible in peacetime. Evening classes taught welding, mechanics, blueprint reading, and other critical competencies, empowering women with knowledge that extended beyond the immediate demands of wartime labor. These educational gains had lasting effects, equipping a generation of women with skills that would influence both industry and society long after the war concluded. The home front became a mirror of transformation. Neighborhoods, schools, and civic organizations adapted to support the workforce, creating childcare networks, transportation solutions, and social services that enabled women to maintain productivity. Communities recognized that supporting women's labor was not just a civic duty, but a strategic necessity. This symbiosis of societal adaptation and individual effort underscored the interdependence of national success and female participation, highlighting how homefront dynamics could directly influence outcomes on the global stage. The psychological and social consequences were equally significant. Women gained confidence, independence, and a sense of agency previously denied by rigid social structures. They experienced firsthand that their labor and intellect were critical to national survival, reinforcing a belief in equality and capability. Letters, diaries, and oral histories reveal the transformative impact on identity, ambition, and aspiration, suggesting that the war's effects on gender roles would resonate for decades. The workforce had become a proving ground for social change, demonstrating that adversity and necessity could accelerate cultural evolution. By the close of 1945, the integration of women into America's industrial and logistical networks had proven both essential and revolutionary. They had reshaped social norms, challenged discrimination, and demonstrated that courage, skill, and determination were not the exclusive domain of men. The war had shown that when women were given opportunity and responsibility, they could achieve extraordinary outcomes on the factory floor, in the home, and in the collective consciousness of a nation. Their labor had not only fueled the machines of victory, but had ignited a transformation in society that would endure long after the final victory celebrations faded. By 1945, the unprecedented integration of women into America's workforce had created an economic engine that powered both victory and social transformation. Factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants produced goods at a scale and speed previously unimaginable, fueled by a labor force that included millions of women who had stepped into roles once considered beyond their capacity. Their wages, while often lower than men's, brought new financial independence, allowing women to contribute to household income, save for the future, and participate actively in the wartime economy. This economic empowerment became a quiet revolution, reshaping family dynamics and societal expectations. The sheer scale of production demanded not just labor, but ingenuity. Women developed new methods, streamlined assembly lines, and optimized workflows to maximize efficiency. In munitions plants, they identified ways to reduce waste and improve safety while maintaining production quotas. In aircraft factories, their meticulous attention to detail ensured that engines and fuselages met exacting standards. These innovations demonstrated that women were not only capable of meeting industrial demands, but could improve upon existing processes, enhancing the overall effectiveness of the war machine. Wages earned by women also had profound social implications. For many, this was their first experience of financial autonomy. They managed budgets, made household decisions, and gained a sense of personal agency that had previously been limited by economic dependence. This newfound independence fostered confidence, ambition, and a reevaluation of traditional gender roles. Communities and families began to acknowledge the legitimacy of women's contributions not just to the war effort, but to society as a whole, creating a shift in perception that would resonate for generations. The economic participation of women also allowed the nation to sustain high levels of production despite male enlistment. As millions of men went overseas, women filled critical gaps in labor, ensuring that factories, farms, and transportation networks continued to function without interruption. Their work prevented bottlenecks in supply chains, kept raw materials moving, and allowed finished goods to reach military depots on time. In effect, women's labor had become a strategic asset, directly influencing the ability of the United States to wage a global war effectively. The contributions of minority women added another layer of significance. African American and Latino women, previously marginalized in industrial employment, gained access to skilled positions due to wartime necessity. Their work not only helped sustain production, but also challenged systemic inequalities. By demonstrating competence in roles historically denied to them, minority women helped pave the way for post-war civil rights advances, showing that economic participation could catalyze social change. The workforce became a site where necessity, skill, and equality intersected under the pressure of national crisis. Beyond industrial labor, women's financial contributions strengthened the broader economy. Their wages fueled consumer demand, supported local businesses, and helped maintain economic stability in communities experiencing rapid demographic and labor shifts. The circulation of this income had ripple effects, sustaining commerce and reinforcing the connection between industrial labor and societal well-being. The war effort was thus not only a military and industrial endeavor, but also an economic transformation that elevated women to a position of national significance. Education and training further amplified economic impact. Technical programs, apprenticeship courses, and on-the-job mentorship allowed women to acquire skills with long-term value. Many of these skills, welding, machining, drafting, logistics management, remained relevant after the war, equipping women to continue contributing to industry, government, and technology sectors. This lasting human capital demonstrated that wartime labor was not a temporary stopgap, but an investment in national capability and individual empowerment. By the end of the war, it was clear that women had become an indispensable economic force. Their labor had fueled production, sustained the home front, and contributed directly to military success. Beyond material impact, it had transformed societal norms, expanded opportunity, and demonstrated that skill, dedication, and resilience were not limited by gender. The economic empowerment of women during World War II was a defining achievement, illustrating that victory at home and abroad depended as much on ingenuity, labor, and determination as on bullets and bombs. By 1945, as the guns fell silent and victory became tangible, the contributions of women on the home front had left an indelible mark on American society. Factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants no longer operated solely as industrial machines. They had become stages upon which women demonstrated extraordinary skill, resilience, and leadership. Their labor had not only sustained the war effort, but had redefined the possibilities of American industry, challenging assumptions about who could perform technically complex and physically demanding work. The legacy of this period would shape the workforce and societal expectations for decades to come. Many women anticipated returning to domestic life once men came home, yet the experience of independence, skill mastery, and financial autonomy had transformed their identities. Oral histories reveal a profound sense of pride and accomplishment, tempered by uncertainty about societal acceptance of their wartime roles. Some returned to traditional domestic work willingly, while others sought to retain their newfound independence through continued employment, education, or community leadership. This tension underscored the transformative impact of wartime labor on personal and cultural identity, revealing a generation reshaped by necessity, experience, and achievement. The industrial skills women acquired during the war did not vanish with the cessation of hostilities. Many continued to contribute to peacetime production, technological innovation, and civil service. Skilled trades such as welding, machining, and drafting had been mastered at a professional level, creating a pool of labor capable of driving post-war industrial growth. Women who had proven themselves as supervisors, managers, and innovators carried these capabilities forward, influencing workplace culture, production methods, and the integration of women into professional and technical fields long after the war ended. The war also catalyzed broader social changes. Exposure to integrated workplaces, collaborative problem-solving, and technical training challenged entrenched gender and racial hierarchies. Minority women who had gained access to previously restricted roles had demonstrated capability and resilience, sowing the seeds for civil rights movements and post-war social reform. The integration of women across racial and ethnic lines, even if incomplete, represented a profound step toward inclusivity, showing that the demands of national survival could accelerate societal evolution in ways that peacetime conditions rarely permitted. Cultural representation evolved in tandem with these social shifts. Rosie the Riveter, initially a propaganda figure, became a lasting symbol of women's capability and contribution to national power. Books, films, and media coverage reinforced this narrative, immortalizing the achievements of industrial women and inspiring subsequent generations. Educational programs and historical accounts emphasized their role, ensuring that the lessons of the home front, skill, perseverance, and strategic importance, were not forgotten. These representations shaped the collective memory of the war, linking women's labor directly to national survival and industrial triumph. Economic consequences of wartime employment also endured. Millions of women had earned wages, managed budgets, and gained financial independence, altering family dynamics and expectations. This economic empowerment had subtle but enduring effects, influencing consumer behavior, educational opportunities for children, and societal perceptions of women's roles. Families and communities had witnessed the tangible benefits of female labor, and the precedent established during wartime created a foundation for expanded participation in professional, technical, and managerial roles in subsequent decades. The war demonstrated that national survival depended not only on soldiers on the front lines, but also on skilled laborers on the home front. Women's labor became a decisive strategic asset, sustaining production and enabling the United States to project power across the globe. Their work had been rigorous, dangerous, and exhausting, yet its consequences were profound. Men and machines could fight overseas only because women had sustained the industrial and logistical backbone at home. The home front, once considered peripheral, had proven itself central to victory. By the conclusion of the war, the contribution of women had become a touchstone for understanding resilience, capability, and social transformation. Factories, shipyards, and communities had been transformed. Skill, determination, and leadership had been demonstrated on a scale previously unimagined. The wartime experience had redefined expectations, opened new opportunities, and reshaped the social and economic landscape of the nation. Women had proven themselves indispensable, leaving a legacy of empowerment, innovation, and strategic importance that would influence both the workforce and the broader society for generations to come. By 1945, it was evident that the industrial mobilization led by women on the home front had become a strategic weapon as potent as any military force. American factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants were producing at levels that dwarfed Axis capabilities, turning industrial output into a decisive element of global warfare. Ships launched faster than submarines could sink them, bombers rolled off assembly lines in staggering numbers, and munitions flowed uninterrupted to every theater of conflict. Behind every ton of steel and every engine assembled were women whose skill and dedication had directly shaped the outcome of the war. The scale of production enabled the United States to supply allies across multiple continents simultaneously. Lend-Lease shipments to Britain, the Soviet Union, and China were only possible because of the sustained labor of women in factories and docks. Each crate of munitions, each fighter plane, each naval vessel sent overseas reflected meticulous planning, precise execution, and tireless effort. The home front had become a linchpin in global strategy, proving that victory could be determined not solely by battlefield tactics, but by the industrial capacity and organizational skill of a nation's civilian workforce. This transformation also highlighted the interplay between labor, technology, and strategy. Women mastered complex machinery, navigated supply chains, and contributed to process innovations that increased output and reduced errors. Their work forced industrial managers to rethink workflow, safety, and efficiency, resulting in production systems that were both highly adaptable and resilient under pressure. The lessons learned from integrating women into skilled labor roles would inform not only wartime strategy, but post-war industrial practices, demonstrating that human capital could be leveraged as effectively as material resources. The global impact of women's labor extended beyond material production. Their participation signaled to allies and adversaries alike the industrial and societal strength of the United States. The ability to maintain continuous output, integrate a diverse workforce, and sustain logistical networks under immense pressure sent a clear message. America's capacity to wage war was unmatched. This industrial credibility became a form of soft power, shaping diplomatic calculations and influencing the strategic decisions of both friends and foes. In Europe and the Pacific, the consequences of American production were immediately tangible. Allied forces received aircraft, tanks, and munitions in quantities that allowed coordinated, sustained offensives. Naval campaigns benefited from ships assembled under the rivets and welds of female hands, while air campaigns relied on planes produced with meticulous care and precision. Each victory on the battlefield was underpinned by the invisible labor of the home front, transforming ordinary citizens into pivotal actors on the global stage. The integration of women into leadership roles within industry also amplified strategic efficiency. Female supervisors, forewomen, and logistical coordinators ensured that production lines ran smoothly, bottlenecks were addressed, and quality control was maintained. Their leadership was crucial in translating labor into strategic outcomes, demonstrating that effective management and technical skill were as vital to victory as raw manpower or material resources. The success of these women illustrated that strategic advantage could emerge from the optimal coordination of human talent. Education and technical training for women created a long-term reservoir of skilled labor. The mastery of machinery, welding, drafting, and logistics provided the United States with an industrial elite capable of sustaining post-war innovation and economic growth. These skills, honed under the pressures of wartime necessity, would drive technological advancement and industrial competitiveness for decades. The home front had not only contributed to immediate military objectives, but had also established the foundations for enduring national strength. By the end of 1945, the strategic significance of women's labor was undeniable. Their contribution had enabled the United States to outproduce adversaries, sustain allies, and project power across the globe. Factories, shipyards, and production lines had become instruments of national strategy, and women were the force operating them. The war had demonstrated that victory was inseparable from industrial capacity, and that industrial capacity, in turn, depended on the skill, resilience, and leadership of an engaged and empowered workforce. By 1945, the role of women in American industry had expanded far beyond manual labor to encompass technological innovation and problem-solving at the highest levels. In aircraft factories, women calibrated engines, tested avionics, and inspected fuselages with an expertise that rivaled that of seasoned engineers. Their ability to learn complex systems quickly, diagnose errors, and implement solutions under pressure made them indispensable contributors to the rapid technological advancements that defined the Allied war effort. Each precision adjustment and carefully executed task contributed directly to the effectiveness and reliability of military equipment deployed overseas. Shipyards, too, became arenas of innovation where women applied mechanical knowledge to optimize production. Riveting techniques were refined, assembly lines reorganized, and workflow improved to increase speed without sacrificing structural integrity. Female workers frequently suggested modifications to improve efficiency or safety, demonstrating insight that had previously been undervalued in industrial settings. These incremental innovations, multiplied across thousands of plants and thousands of workers, cumulatively accelerated production timelines, directly influencing the pace at which the Allies could equip forces and maintain strategic momentum. Women also played a critical role in quality control and testing, ensuring that every component, whether a ship's hull, a bomber engine, or a munitions round, met rigorous standards. They developed meticulous inspection protocols, identifying potential failures before they could compromise missions. This attention to detail not only reduced waste and prevented costly mistakes, but also safeguarded the lives of soldiers and sailors relying on equipment produced thousands of miles away. Their labor ensured that American production was not only fast but reliable, reinforcing the strategic advantage of the industrial machine. The integration of women into technical and supervisory roles had significant ripple effects on workforce culture. Their presence challenged long-standing assumptions about capability, forcing managers and engineers to reassess gendered stereotypes. Women demonstrated that cognitive skill, attention to detail, and leadership were not the exclusive domain of men, thereby reshaping perceptions of workplace competence. This cultural shift laid the groundwork for future professional integration, creating a precedent for women in engineering, aviation, and industrial management in the post-war era. Training programs and vocational schools became incubators for female expertise. Evening classes in mechanics, blueprint reading, welding, and logistics enabled women to acquire and refine skills critical to industrial success. The rapid mastery of technical knowledge allowed women to assume roles that were once considered too complex or dangerous, demonstrating that structured education combined with practical experience could create highly capable workers in remarkably short time frames. Their success underscored the importance of accessible training in maximizing national productivity and technological advancement. The war also accelerated collaborative problem-solving between men and women in industry. Mixed teams tackled complex manufacturing challenges, streamlined production workflows, and implemented safety improvements. Women contributed innovative ideas born from close interaction with machinery and assembly processes, sometimes suggesting approaches that engineers had overlooked. This synergy demonstrated that diversity of perspective enhanced problem-solving and that women's inclusion was essential for optimizing industrial efficiency under wartime pressures. Minority women brought additional expertise and resilience to these technological endeavors. African American, Latina, and immigrant workers gained access to technical training and skilled positions, often overcoming systemic barriers to make significant contributions. Their participation not only addressed labor shortages, but also enriched the knowledge base of industrial operations, demonstrating that innovation and capability were enhanced by inclusion and diversity. These contributions foreshadowed the post-war civil rights and workforce integration movements that would continue the work begun during the crucible of conflict. By the close of the war, it was clear that women had become indispensable agents of industrial innovation. Their technical skill, problem-solving ability, and leadership had accelerated production, improved quality, and strengthened the strategic position of the United States. Factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants had become laboratories of ingenuity, and women were the operators, innovators, and overseers driving this transformation. Their expertise not only won battles abroad but also reshaped the technological and professional landscape at home, leaving a legacy of capability, empowerment, and enduring societal impact. By 1945, the contributions of women on the American home front had reverberated far beyond the nation's borders, shaping the global balance of power. Allied leaders recognized that the ability of the United States to sustain continuous production of ships, aircraft, and munitions was decisive in maintaining pressure on Axis powers. Lend-Lease shipments, coordinated by women in logistics and administration, enabled Britain, the Soviet Union, and other allies to continue fighting at critical junctures. Every crate loaded, every transport scheduled, and every aircraft inspected represented a direct link between female labor and the survival of nations. The speed and scale of American production, powered largely by women, became a strategic signal to the world. Axis intelligence reports noted the unprecedented capacity of the U.S. industrial machine, altering strategic calculations and forcing Germany and Japan to expend resources attempting to counter a force they could not match. Women had become silent strategists, their labor influencing global military planning simply through the output they maintained. The industrial home front had evolved into a weapon as powerful as any naval fleet or air squadron. Allied morale was profoundly affected by the knowledge that the American workforce was capable of sustaining operations across multiple theaters. Letters from European fronts expressed admiration for the factories and shipyards, often acknowledging the essential contributions of women whose labor made reinforcements and supplies possible. These communications underscored the invisible but vital role played by civilians in securing victory, demonstrating that the home front was an integral part of international military strategy. American women also influenced international perceptions of gender and labor. Propaganda and newsreels circulated globally, showcasing female workers wielding tools, supervising production lines, and mastering complex machinery. This imagery challenged traditional European and Asian notions of gender roles, demonstrating that women could occupy positions of technical skill and leadership without diminishing their societal value. The war's home front had become a stage where women's capability was projected to the world, reshaping expectations across continents. The integration of women into highly skilled labor created an industrial culture that emphasized adaptability, problem-solving, and technical mastery. Allies observed the effectiveness of this approach, noting how the United States could maintain production despite personnel losses or supply chain disruptions. Women's contributions provided a blueprint for post-war reconstruction and industrial policy in liberated nations, showing that the mobilization of civilian expertise could enhance resilience and accelerate recovery in times of crisis. Diplomatic negotiations and strategic planning were informed by the realities of industrial capacity. Allied leaders knew that America's ability to produce war material in unprecedented quantities allowed for sustained offensives and reduced reliance on contested supply lines. Women's labor, therefore, had a direct effect on the diplomatic and strategic positioning of nations, reinforcing the United States' status as an indispensable partner and global power. Their work underpinned the credibility of Allied commitments and the feasibility of coordinated multinational operations. The home front's influence extended into post-war planning. As discussions began about rebuilding Europe and ensuring long-term security, policymakers recognized the importance of technical training, workforce integration, and industrial infrastructure. The lessons learned from mobilizing women in wartime, rapid skill acquisition, efficient production, and inclusive labor practices became models for post-war economic and social development. The war had proven that civilian labor, when strategically harnessed, could shape the global balance of power as decisively as armies or navies. By the end of the conflict, the international impact of American women's labor was unmistakable. Their contributions had not only sustained Allied forces, but had transformed global perceptions of capability, efficiency, and social organization. Factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants had become instruments of diplomacy, strategy, and international influence, powered by women whose skill, resilience, and determination had helped win the war. The home front had proven itself a force of global consequence, its legacy extending far beyond the borders of the United States. By 1945, the narrative of American victory could not be told without the human stories of women who had labored tirelessly on the home front. In factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants, countless individuals faced exhaustion, injury, and personal sacrifice, yet they persevered with unwavering dedication. Letters, diaries, and oral histories reveal the intimate realities behind the statistics. Mothers who stitched together uniforms between shifts, teenagers learning complex machinery alongside seasoned workers, and women who continued to produce bombs, planes, and ships while carrying the weight of family responsibilities at home. Their contributions were personal acts of courage that collectively became a national triumph. Fatigue and risk were constant companions. Women worked in environments filled with hazardous chemicals, searing heat from welding, and the constant din of machinery. Accidents were inevitable, yet the labor force adapted rapidly, implementing safety protocols, mentoring new workers, and sharing knowledge to reduce injuries. Their commitment was both pragmatic and moral. They understood that each task completed directly supported the soldiers fighting overseas, transforming dangerous and grueling work into acts of patriotic significance. Many women developed deep bonds through shared labor, forming communities of support that transcended social, racial, and economic divisions. Friendships forged on production lines offered comfort and solidarity amid relentless pressure. These networks became lifelines for emotional resilience, allowing women to navigate exhaustion, stress, and personal loss. The home front was thus a microcosm of camaraderie and shared purpose, where collaboration and mutual reliance were as essential as technical skill. Letters from soldiers abroad often praised the contributions of the women they depended upon, offering glimpses into how invisible labor resonated across oceans. Each shipment, each completed engine, each assembled ship was more than machinery. It was a tangible expression of care, competence, and commitment. These personal connections reinforced morale both at home and on the battlefield, creating a feedback loop in which labor became a medium of shared sacrifice and national unity. The stories of minority women add an essential dimension to this narrative. African American, Latina, and immigrant women navigated systemic discrimination even as they filled critical roles in skilled labor and supervision. Their perseverance, ingenuity, and excellence in the face of adversity not only sustained industrial output, but also challenged long-standing social barriers. Through their work, they expanded the definition of who could participate fully in national endeavors, leaving a legacy of inclusion and resilience that would echo in post-war civil rights movements. The emotional stakes were heightened by the constant awareness of the war's human cost. Women grappled with the knowledge that husbands, brothers, and sons faced life-or-death situations daily. This understanding imbued their labor with urgency and meaning, transforming repetitive industrial tasks into acts of solidarity and moral responsibility. Every rivet, weld, or riveted panel was a testament to endurance, precision, and the emotional connection between home front and battlefield. Community recognition became a vital component of sustaining labor. Civic groups, schools, churches, and local governments celebrated women's achievements through awards, parades, and public acknowledgement. These gestures, though symbolic, reinforced the sense of purpose and national pride, reminding workers that their labor was essential not just materially but morally. The home front emerged as a theater of heroism, where ordinary citizens performed extraordinary deeds. By the end of the war, the human stories behind industrial victory had crystallized into a testament of resilience, skill, and collective determination. Women had transformed factories into arenas of courage, ingenuity, and social evolution. Their labor, though often unseen by the broader public, had been indispensable to the Allied victory. The legacy of these individual and collective acts of dedication would endure, shaping post-war industry, society, and the very understanding of who could contribute meaningfully to national destiny. By 1945, the culmination of women's labor on the American home front had forged a legacy that extended far beyond wartime production. Factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants had become arenas of empowerment, where women demonstrated skill, resilience, and leadership on a scale previously unimaginable. Their contributions had sustained the Allied war effort, enabled global strategy, and reshaped societal perceptions of gender, race, and labor. The lessons of the home front would reverberate for decades, influencing post-war industry, civil rights, and the cultural imagination of a nation forever changed by necessity and courage. The post-war period highlighted the transformative impact of wartime labor. Millions of women returned to civilian life with enhanced technical skills, professional confidence, and financial independence. These capabilities allowed them to participate in industries, education, and public service in ways that had been previously limited. The war had demonstrated that women could excel in technical, managerial, and leadership roles, challenging the entrenched notion that such work was the exclusive domain of men. This realization became a catalyst for the broader social and economic integration of women in subsequent decades. The educational and technical training provided during wartime proved to be one of the most enduring legacies. Skills in welding, mechanics, logistics, and quality control became transferable assets, equipping women to continue contributing to the industrial economy long after the guns fell silent. Vocational programs, mentorship initiatives, and on-the-job training had created a highly skilled female workforce, a resource that would drive innovation, efficiency, and growth in post-war America. The war had accelerated the acquisition of expertise, proving that urgent necessity could unlock human potential on an unprecedented scale. The social consequences were equally profound. Communities had adapted to support working women, creating childcare systems, transportation networks, and neighborhood cooperation. These innovations had lasting effects on family structures and community organization, fostering a culture in which women's labor and leadership were recognized as essential. The shared experience of sacrifice and achievement strengthened social cohesion, instilled a sense of civic pride, and laid the groundwork for movements advocating gender equality and workforce participation in the post-war era. The experiences of minority women during the war also left a lasting imprint. African American, Latina, and immigrant women had demonstrated extraordinary capability and resilience in overcoming systemic barriers, expanding the boundaries of opportunity for future generations. Their labor challenged discrimination, reshaped workplace practices, and became a stepping stone toward post-war civil rights advancements. The inclusion of these women in critical roles underscored the principle that national survival and success relied upon merit and skill rather than entrenched social hierarchies. The cultural impact of women's wartime contributions was cemented through media, propaganda, and storytelling. Iconic figures like Rosie the Riveter became enduring symbols of capability, determination, and patriotic service. Newsreels, photographs, and films immortalized women's work, ensuring that the narrative of the home front would be remembered as an integral component of victory. These representations inspired future generations, highlighting the connection between individual effort, collective purpose, and national success. Strategically, the war had demonstrated that victory was inseparable from industrial capacity and skilled labor. Women had become a decisive factor in sustaining production, enabling military operations, and maintaining global influence. The lessons learned about workforce integration, technological adaptation, and the power of collective human effort would inform post-war policy, industry, and international strategy. The home front had proven itself a battlefield in its own right, where determination, skill, and innovation shaped the course of history. By the close of 1945, the legacy of women's labor was undeniable. They had transformed industry, society, and national identity through skill, resilience, and dedication. Factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants were not merely instruments of production. They were crucibles of empowerment, innovation, and social transformation. The war had revealed the extraordinary capacity of women to shape history, proving that the combination of talent, courage, and collective purpose could alter the trajectory of nations. The story of the home front remains a testament to human potential, a vivid reminder that the course of history is shaped not only by battles fought overseas, but also by the quiet, unrelenting labor of those who sustain the engine of victory.